Hi, this is Denise Matthew, and welcome to another part of HT 101, How to Read Your Human Design Chart. I just wanted to let you know that if you wanted to slow down the speed of my voice, it's an easy thing to do. Just do it on the playback speed as I'm showing here, and it will be an experience tailor-made for you. Since human design is many different systems all in one, there are parts of astrology that feature in the body graph. Now, you don't need to know astrology to know anything about human design. It certainly doesn't hurt to know some astrology, but again, it's all within the human design system, and you absolutely don't need to know astrology. But the reason why I need to talk about the planets is that the planets are found in certain gates. And that's the important part, because each planet has its own specific flavor and what it gives to that particular gate. So there's an expression that comes through the gate that sort of connects to the gate. So you have your gate, which means a certain thing, and then you also have the line, which gives it another flavor, and then you have the planet, which is just one more dimension of the whole energy of that particular gate. So we know that the design side of the body graph is all related to where the planets were in the sky 88 degrees before the birth of the individual. So that usually works out to be about 88 days before. So for instance, if somebody was born April 20th, then their design date would be January 22nd. The design date really isn't important for you to know, but it's just to say that that's where the information comes from. So it's where the position of the planets were at that particular time. So for instance, if we were into astrology, if you're into astrology and you have what they call a birth chart or a natal chart, then you'll see that the only parts of the chart that will show up on a natal chart or a birth chart would be exactly what was going on with the planets when you were born. And that would be your personality. The other side would not be something that you're going to see. So they're almost like invisible spots that you don't necessarily see. And that sort of makes a lot of sense, because considering that the design side is really where we don't know as much about ourselves until we're older. So if we look at this particular chart, this person was born on January 5th. That means their design date was on October 10th. Again, not important, but I just wanted to show you that that's where the extra numbers come from, the extra gates, and also where the planets were on the design side. And the design side, of course, is important because it's just as much a part of us as a personality side. So if you look at the human design mandala, usually people don't have this as that would be their body graph that they'd look at, because it has a lot of extra information that can be a little bit confusing. But just so you know where the planets and how they sort of go around the whole mandala, I just wanted to bring this image up. But usually you'll just get the plain body graph, which is the center, and that's easier to follow. As you get more into human design, you might want to use a mandala. It's not necessary because everything's written on the chart anyhow. This is just like, it's just kind of, actually, let's be honest, it's kind of prettier. It does have the hexagrams on the outside. So say you're into I Ching, because that's the I Ching hexagrams on the outside, or say you're into astrology, you'll notice that the zodiac signs are around there. So if you notice, I have Aquarius pointed out. So the whole chart or the whole circle is 360 degrees, and each one of the gates is in a specific degree section or a certain amount of degrees. So for instance, if we look at the gate 64, we see that it's in Virgo, between 11.22 degrees and 17 degrees of Virgo. So that's where the gate 64 would be found. Again, not important, but if you're somebody who likes astrology or you're interested in astrology, then this is kind of where you can sort of play with it. The other thing is you'll notice that the gate 64 is in the 64th hexagram. And so if you are into I Ching, then you would look at the 64th hexagram if you're interested. And some people will sort of cross match those. But this is kind of advanced stuff, and I would suggest that you get the basics down before you add into it. But if you really are an astrology buff and you really want to connect it with human design, then you might have a lot of fun with it. But when we're looking at the planets, we're thinking about the sun is generally where all the incarnation crosses come from, because if you notice that every incarnation cross is made up of the sun and the earth. So the sun goes around the whole mandala in a year. And The moon goes around in about 28, 29 days. The other planets have varying speeds. So if you look at, for instance, Mercury, that's about a year. Venus is about a year, except for when it goes retrograde, and then it might take a little bit longer. Then you have Mars, which is about 2 to 2.5 years. Then you get into Jupiter, which is 12 years. Then you get into Uranus, which is 82 years. Then you get into Neptune. Neptune is 165 years and Pluto is 248 years. So when I talk about transits, like sometimes I'll do a transit report. When I'm talking about transits, I like to focus on the bigger planets. They don't move as much, during a year, or maybe they don't even change gates in a year. But the whole point of it is that it's going to be impactful because that particular planet is in a gate for a very long time. Right now, as I'm recording this, we have, for instance, Pluto's been in the gate 61, and it's been in the gate 61 all year. Now, just getting back to this whole planetary thing, we're going to distill it down. The most important thing, or the only thing that you really need to know, is in your body graph and the gates. I have some key words about the planets, and I'll have those later on as we go along. And so you can just kind of mix the flavor of the gate with the flavor of the planet to give you more of a feeling of exactly how that planet energy is going to factor in your body graph. So let's go in and have a look at what the glyphs are and what the glyphs represent. And one last thing I forgot to say was also Saturn goes around the mandala, and that is in about 28 to 29 years. When we talk about glyphs, we're talking about the symbols that are for the planets. So on the right-hand side here, we have the glyphs for all the planets that are in the body graph. And the glyphs are for the sun, earth, moon, and it goes down. So the next slide, I'll have all the names for all the different glyphs. And that will show you exactly what gate was being transited by what planet at the moment of your birth. And then the design side, as I spoke before about, that's 88 days or 88 degrees before your birth. And here's just a different image of the planets and the glyphs. Basically just a different mode of seeing the planets and the glyphs. So here's an image that tells you all the names for all the particular glyphs, and it goes right from the sun down to Pluto. Now, the only glyph that we don't have here is Chiron. And Chiron is important, especially for anybody who has a sixth line in their profile. I will talk about that a little bit later on, but for now, I just wanted to show you these particular glyphs so that you can identify what gate is in what planet. And this is a key for all the degrees for all the different gates that I talked about and what particular zodiac sign they're in, so that if you want to look at exactly where they are, if you're into astrology, again, this is not it's something you need to know, but if you want to know it, it's available for you. And I actually just took it in 2 different slides so that it would be easy to see, because when I increased the size of it in just one side, you couldn't see it enough. So it's the same thing on 2 different slides, so you can get a nice view of all of them rather than it being too small and difficult to read. And as you can see, this comes from humandesignsystem.com. And if you want to check out their website, feel free to do so. So here's a complete list with all the keywords for you if you want to do a screenshot so that you have this for your reference about all the planets and the flavors that they give to the gates. I will go through them individually, but if you want this for your records, I thought I'd just leave it here so you can do with it as you like. As I was saying before, when we talk about the planets, we're talking about a different type of flavor. So when a gate is in the sun, that would be the outer expression of who you are. And when we talk about it being in the sun, that's going to be in the top 4 numbers up top. So that's part of your incarnation cross. There's already so much on all the other parts of human design. To talk about the incarnation cross would just complicate things even more. So in the future, I will make a video about how to read your incarnation cross, and knowing the basics that we've learned in this course will be very helpful for you to read your incarnation cross. So the bottom line about the sun is that it's important. And that's for the design side as well as the personality side. It is the expression of who you are. And it really is when we talk about the sun sign in astrology, this is the sun sign, you could say, or the sun gate for you in human design. So it's an expression of what you show to the world when you walk out in the world, because the sun is the embodiment of who we are. And the whole concept is that we know more about our conscious sun than we know about our design sun, or our unconscious sun, meaning that when you're out in the world, then people see that particular part of you. They may see the other part of you, but that's a part of you that you're not actually consciously putting out into the world. It's just part of you that's walking in the world and just being that expression of the sun. So that's a difference. And just for your reference, this is where the incarnation cross is on this particular chart. Sometimes they have it at the bottom of the charts. If you notice in the incarnation cross, they have the gate 54, the gate 53, the gate 57, and also the gate 51. And if you notice, that lines up with the personality sun, the personality earth, and the design sun and the design earth. So that's the top 4 numbers that will always make up your incarnation cross. So to read your incarnation cross, like I said, I will do a video in the future, but to read it for now, if you wanted to kind of get a flavor of what it kind of meant for you, to know the gates that make up your incarnation cross, to really get in touch with those gates, to try and identify them in yourself and try and identify them in other people, will give you even more of a flavor of what it means to have that particular incarnation cross. But based on what Ra Uru said, your incarnation cross is not something that you live out immediately. It's something that usually comes after you've been in human design for a while. It's the high side. And it also, a lot of times from what I've read, is that it comes after you've done the 7-year deconditioning, which is the first day you met human design, or you saw your first body graph or had your first reading, is a day that you met human design. And that is considered the day where you start your deconditioning with human design. And usually that only happens if you stick with it. I mean, it's not going to happen if you're not doing human design. It's a 7-year process, and what it means is that it goes through all the particular gates, and based on human design theory, each gate is about 40 days at a time, and what happens in that particular time for each particular gate is that you are living out that particular energy of that gate. And even if you don't have it defined in your body graph, I mean, you have the whole mandala you're going to go through, and it starts at a certain way. Richard Rudd has a whole writing about it where he talks about 7 years on the wheel of passage. It might be available. I'm sure it's available somewhere on the internet, so you can check that out if you're interested in it. Richard Rudd, if you don't know who he is, he actually was a colleague and student of Ra Uru. He worked with human design for quite a while, and then later on he went off and did his own thing and developed what he called the gene keys. So that's who he is. Now, if we move on to the Earth is all about what grounds you in your life. So it's what we receive from the world. I'm just talking about the planets right now and what they mean. At the end, I'm going to go through a chart and talk about the different gates and all those kind of things when I do the whole example. So you'll be able to see how you put it all together. In the beginning, it's mainly just keywords, and I've added the keywords and the gates to this video so that if you didn't watch the other videos where I had them in, you could get a idea of the flavors of the planets combined with the gates, and that's kind of how you read it. The more you work with a body graph, your body graph or other people's body graphs, because this particular course is for somebody who just wants to look at their own body graph. I mean, it's a tool to have self-learning and to get into your chart so you can see exactly who you are based on your chart. Or you can also use it to read yourself and other people. There's so many ways that you can use this information. But the Earth is important in that it grounds us in who we are and what we're doing in our lives. So I'll as I said, I'll show you in a gate what it looks like soon. So hang on for that. When we talk about the moon, this is all about the emotions, our emotions, and it is also what drives you. It's what puts the fire in the engine, what makes you get up in the morning, that propelling force that is always making you sort of go the extra mile. And usually the moon tells us the driving force for it kind of connects with the incarnation cross. So it kind of talks about the theme. where you're going to do your incarnation cross, how you're going to express it, because the moon is such a big part of you. The North Node is the theme that gets activated after our Uranus opposition. And everybody's is going to be a little bit different, but it's usually about 38, 42 years of age, around there. And it's the theme of your life that you live out after your Uranus opposition. And this is not as important for people who are sixth line, because Chiron is sort of the stage where they change. The nodes are always going to be part of your life. They don't go away. And just because it's a theme for the second part of your life doesn't mean that the south node, which is considered the theme before your Uranus opposition, goes away. They do still work. They're always going to be there, but then that theme sort of gets more activated. My perspective on the nodes is that they're karmic as well. And so the North Node, if we throw in some astrology, is where we're going in this incarnation, where we want to, the sort of destination of the things we want to learn, the places we want to go can be seen with the North Node. And as I said, the South Node is the theme that we live out before the Uranus opposition. And once again, in my opinion, there's a lot of karma involved with the nodes. So the South Node for me is what we came into this life with. Now, you can believe in past life incarnations or not, but it's the gifts we come in with that we already know. So usually the energy of the South Node is something that we find easy to do. We may not necessarily want to do it, but we find it easy to do it, or we may want to do it because it is so easy for us. But our destination is meant to go to the North Node, and because of that, it can be difficult because the North Node is so foreign and so unusual to us. Again, the same concept is here. The Chiron return is important for those who are sixth line, and the Chiron return happens about age 50 or 51. We'll talk about Chiron a little bit later. Some of these planets, like for instance Mercury, Mercury is a planet of communication. It's the planet that moves fast. It is the planet of that does all the communications that we have. It can be the media, it could be anything that's sort of communicating. And as expected in human design, it's what we communicate, what we talk about in the world, and that's what that gate in whatever gate is in Mercury, or whatever gate Mercury was transiting when we were born, or our design side, is what we communicate or talk about in our world. And Venus is what we value, because Venus is all about beautiful things, things that we love, the things that make our hearts sing. It's all about the nice food, good food, things like that. So it is all about feminine energy as well when we're talking about human design. And it could be who we are attracted to in a partnership. So the kind of feminine energy that we're attracted to in a partnership. Now, the feminine energy doesn't have to be gender-based. It could be the feminine energy, that soft energy, that the yin to the yang. And if Venus is the yin, then Mars is the yang. This is also where we grow. So the gate that Mars is in is a gate that we grow as we get older. And usually after we have our Uranus opposition, we sort of mature more on that gate. So when we're talking about that, we're talking about the expression of the gate maybe on the lower side or the shadow side, and then it becomes more on the high side as we age. It's also the masculine energy that we are attracted to as well. When we talk about Saturn, we're talking about a place where we learn our biggest and deepest lessons, because this energy, the gates that are in our Saturn, both the personality and the design, are the areas where we can a lot of times have our biggest lessons in life. It's where you throw everything in the fire, and what comes out is the gold. And that's what Saturn is all about. Saturn is a teacher. Saturn is a taskmaster. Saturn will push you to the wall and say, what do you really want? How far are you willing to go for the goals and dreams that you have? And how hard are you willing to work? Because it is all about work. So when you master your Saturn, or you master the energy of those gates, then you get your Jupiter reward. And Jupiter is all about our reward. As I said, it's the blessings that you get. It's the good things you get in life because you've done hard work. So if you go out and you work a job and you bring home a certain amount of money and you get to go on a vacation, that's Jupiter. The vacation is Jupiter. You're out having fun, you're enjoying life, and that's the reward you get. So Saturn is your job, and Jupiter, in an analogy, Saturn would be like the job you do and all the things you have to do to make the money so that you can have that vacation at the end of the rainbow. Or you could also have something, if you don't like vacations, it could be something that you buy. If some people like new cars or something material. Usually Jupiter is about that, eat, drink, and be merry and have a great time. And those are the rewards that you get in your design and your personality when you've done the hard work of Saturn. It's like the cool drink or the cold drink you get at the end of a long, enduring race. And the last three planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are considered generational planets. And the reason why they are is because they don't move a lot. I did talk about earlier that one planet, like for instance, Pluto in 2020 is in the gate 61 for the full year. So it means that it moves extremely slowly and it has a really long revolution around the Mandala. So because of that, these are what they consider generational. So somebody who's born in a certain year could have the same gates in Uranus as other people because maybe there was only a few gates that Uranus would travel. So that's what they mean by generational. But frankly, I'm going to say that as far as I'm concerned, a lot of these bigger planets like Uranus and Neptune and Pluto, they still have a decent effect in your chart. And I know that everybody is different. So based on your chart, I wouldn't just discount these gates as not as important because they are generational, because they do have interaction with other planets. And I look at that from an astrological perspective, and you don't need to look at it in that perspective, but you may feel these energies of the gates of these three planets strong or not as strong. But again, it's all individual. And it's definitely worthwhile checking them out to see how they factor in your life. In Uranus, it's all about where we're a little unusual. And all of us are unusual, or we have unique interests in certain things. That's just part of who we are. We're all individuals, and we all have, and some of us are a little more, if you want to use the word freaky, than others. But, we're all freaky in some little way. And that's what we're like in Uranus. This is where things come out of the blue, or the energy of these gates can surprise us or sort of take us off our stride and show us something that we never expected. Uranus is the type of energy that we're walking down the street and suddenly the sidewalk disappears, and that's Uranus. As I said before, Neptune is generational as well, and this is where there's a mystical part of us where things may be a little bit not as clear to us. When we talk about Neptune, we talk about dissolving, and it's ruled by Pisces, which is all about this watery kind of psychic energy. So this is where we could have our spiritual theme, or we could be intuitive here, or it could be things that are not as clear. So maybe the energy of this particular gate isn't as clear as it is in other places. And Pluto is considered the planet of transformation, but in order to transform, it takes everything down to the foundation. So it's like the storm that comes out and blows your house away, and you have to rebuild a house, but the house that you build is stronger than the house that you had before. And that's kind of what Pluto does. So the lessons here are not what you call soft and fluffy like they would be with Venus. They're more of something where, you're really learning something in a big way. Again, this is generational, so it can affect you more or less based on your individual body graph and how it is connected with the other planets in your body graph as well. So this is where we're meant to grow and transform and become, as I say, you build something better on the foundation after everything is sort of blown away. And this is Chiron, and that's the glyph. Chiron's it's not a planet, it's a comet. And the orbit is kind of interesting. It goes around the whole mandala in about 50 to 51 years. This is a big planet for anybody with a sixth line because this is all about that Chiron return. When Chiron gets back to where it was when somebody was born, then you get your Chiron return, and this would be the time where you, as a role model, after it would be your third stage of your transformation, because the first stage is 0 to about 28, 29, and that's sort of 0 until your Saturn return, and then from your Saturn return till your Chiron return, you're on the roof, or you're integrating all the things you did in your first 28 to 29 years when you did a lot of experimentation. And then it moves on to, as I said, the Chiron return, where you come off the roof and all the things you've integrated, you just live your best life, or who you are, to, in authenticity. And because of your authenticity and being exactly who you are, you inspire those around you to be exactly who they are. In human design, everyone has Chiron, and it does have a bearing on everybody, even people who don't have a sixth line in their profile. Chiron is going to be a theme in pretty much everybody's life. It is a big turning point, or a turning time for a lot of people when they have their Chiron return. So I don't think we can just discount it and say that it's not going to matter to somebody who isn't a sixth line. But for somebody with a sixth line energy, this is the coming out phase. This is like where you literally get your chance to come out after all the time. The butterfly comes out of its cocoon, and it's able to fly and be the expression of its true self. And because of this whole long trip between birth and the Chiron return, anybody with the sixth line energy is going to be considered somebody who's a late bloomer. That doesn't mean that you don't have accomplishments as you go along, because everybody is designed differently, and it's all related to what else is in the body graph. You can't base a whole body graph on one particular gate or one particular profile. There has to be everything sort of melded together. Chiron is the wound that we can't heal. But because it's a wound that we can't heal, by helping other people with that particular wound who have a wound like yours, you in some way make your wound not go away, but it gets a little bit less painful for you. And that's the whole point of Chiron, is that you're healing others, and in healing others, you're sort of assisting yourself to get through it, to move through it. So that's why they call it the wounded healer. It is a very deep wound for us. And a centaur, who in Greek mythology, who couldn't heal himself. So that's the whole point that's why we talk about this wound that you can't heal. Now in human design, it's where life gives us a lot of spiritual challenges, and it really depends upon the gate where Chiron is in your chart. Now that's not easy to find because it's not in all the body graphs, but a lot of paid body graph software or subscriptions have Chiron in it so that you can see it. But if you wanted to use that key that I gave you for the astrological degrees and the zodiac signs, you usually can find it from like a natal astrology chart. You can find out where your Chiron is. And if you really have trouble with it, just email me your details and I can do it for you. And in human design, the whole concept with this Chiron is you want to bring the lessons out to the world. The whole idea, as I said, about healing others with the energy of the lessons that you've learned about this wound, makes your wound get better and better. And just so we have it for your reference, in case you didn't get it from another video that I had them in part 3. Just again here, so that you can match the flavors of the planet with the actual gate, so that you can sort of put the keyword of the gate with the flavor of the planet and come up with a bit of an explanation. And it's over 3 different pages, so you'll see the next three pages. And again, you can do a screenshot or whatever you want to do.